Welcome to EPG Pathshala. My name is Mahendra Reddy. I am working as Assistant Professor in Tourism at National Institute of Tourism and Hospitality Management, Hyderabad. Now we are going to discuss a paper on tourism in India and a module on sustainable and responsible tourism. Objective of the presentation is emergence of sustainable and the other alternative forms of tourism, and to know the meaning of responsible and sustainable tourism, and to know the other alternative forms of tourism and its principles, and to know sustainable and responsible tourism in detail. Coming to the introduction, now we are going to discuss what exactly the sustainable tourism is, and before that what are the reasons for the emergence of sustainable tourism, that we'll discuss. So over the past decades, increasing tourism has led to a range of evident and potential positive and negative impacts. Basically, that tourism is a continuous process. Basically it's a movement of the people from one place to other place. When they move from one place to other place, there will be a lot of impacts that will affect on the destination and the origin place, even the transit place also. So, and in the process there will be both positive and negative impacts. In this connection, creating a need for alternative and more environmental and host friendly practices in development, planning and policy making is essential for many countries. So in this context, there are many alternative ways and forms of tourism like responsible, green, soft and other alternative forms of tourism has emerged to develop and manage the tourism in a sustainable way. Coming to the sustainable tourism, there are various definitions of sustainable tourism, and according to even WTO, tourism that takes full account of its current and future economic, social and environmental impacts, addressing the needs of visitors, the industry and environment and the host communities. So this particular definition was given by the WTO, the United Nations World Tourism Organization. According to this particular definition, any development in the tourism that takes place that should take care of the present generation, including the future generation, and whatever the impacts are having on the environment and the society and the economy should be balanced equally, and the people who are involved or the stakeholders who are involved, basically the tourism industry and the local people, the host community and the tourist should get benefit equally. So this is what exactly the sustainable tourism definition includes. Okay, sustainable tourism is not a distinct or a special form of tourism. Rather, all forms of tourism should strive to be sustainable, including what is known as mass tourism. Sustainable tourism management practices are applicable to all forms of tourism in all types of destinations and stakeholders. So basically this particular sustainable tourism development approach is a different kind of approach, and it is instead it's not a product. Basically it is a principle or a theory that can be applicable to all different kind of stakeholders, including the travel agents, the tour operator and the other stakeholders who are involved in the process of tourism. Then coming to the sustainable tourism principle, sustainability principles refers to the environmental, economic and socio-cultural aspects of tourism. The concept has evolved since the 1987 through Agenda 21st. The plan of action emerged from the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development held in Rio in the year 1992. The plan of implementation from the World Summit on Sustainable Development. So basically, this particular concept has been emerging from past 50 years. The basic the origin basically comes to 1970s. Basically in the year 1970s, during this Rio conference, and they insisted about the sustainable development. Before that also like various conferences and conventions held about particularly on sustainable development. So in that regard, it was also considered that tourism can also be considered as one of the major area for the sustainable development. So according to the principles laid down by the different people, basically we are going to discuss main principles that which are applicable for the tourism industry, and these principles are as follows. It is basically make optimal use of environmental resources, conservation of natural heritage and biodiversity, respect the socio-cultural authenticity of the host communities, and conserve their built and living cultural heritage and traditional values, and also ensure viable long-term economic operations, providing socio-economic benefits to all stakeholders that are fairly distributed, provides solutions to pressing issues, and also contributes for the Millennium Developmental Goals and sustainable tourism development also. Basically, there are various principles that we have discussed, and these principles will have a different impacts, and the overall the meaning and the essentiality of this particular principles are to minimize the negative impacts and maximize the positive impacts by doing a different kind of activities, or in implementing the different principles like the conservation and involving the local people, providing the authentic and most valuable experience to the tourist whoever visits that tourist destination, and these are part of the the principles of the sustainable tourism development. Coming to the implementation of sustainable tourism, it requires the informal participation of all relevant stakeholders, strong political leadership to ensure wide participation and consensus building. Okay, basically, achieving a sustainable tourism is a continuous process and requires continuous monitoring on impacts. So, sustainable development is based on principles of husbandry of the world's resources and on the equity in the way those resources are used and in the way in which the benefits obtained from them are distributed. Basically implementation is one of the major tasks that we need to consider when it comes to the sustainable tourism principle implementation, because the problem is that in sustainable tourism everyone was expecting that the government should take responsibility to implement the principles, or maybe the industry, but this problem was there. However, basically it is not only the government role or responsibility to implement, it is everyone's responsibility to implement the principles. As I mentioned in earlier slide that there are various impacts that we can expect because of the implementation of sustainable tourism principles. So basically the Millennium Developmental Goals, which was laid down in the year 2000 to implement and overcome major issues like the poverty, gender equality, and illiteracy and health issues, climate change, loss of biodiversity. These were the main issues considered in the Millennium Developmental Goals to achieve by 2015. However, we could achieve to some extent or larger extent of these principles, and now still we did not achieve 100% of this principle, the goals basically. And again, with this particular region, again we have developed 17 new developmental goals. Those are the sustainable developmental goals. So in this context also, tourism also contributing a lot for achieving these goals. Okay, coming to the sustainable development, in detail, there are three different pillars that we can consider, or generally we can say as the three dimensions of sustainable development. These are economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, and social sustainability. Now we'll discuss these things in detail. Economic sustainability. Economic sustainability generates prosperity at different levels of society, viability of enterprise and activities, and their ability to maintain in the long term. Social sustainability. Social sustainability, which means respecting human rights and equal opportunities for all in a society, and etc. Environmental sustainability. Environmental sustainability basically includes the conservation and management of resources, especially those that are not renewable or precise in terms of the life support. And delivering sustainable development means striking a balance between them. So basically we have discussed three different dimensions, like the social, economic and environmental. So when we talk about the development, basically in any development we should consider these three different dimensions, and that should be balanced equally. Then only we can achieve the sustainable development. It's not only in tourism, in general development also that is possible if we manage three different dimensions in equal way. These are basically the sustainable tourism that we have discussed. Apart from sustainable, these are basically, as discussed in the first slide, that the emergence of the sustainable tourism development is basically that we have seen many negative impacts at the destinations and even in the transit region on environment and economy and society. So to overcome these issues, actually many people, many stakeholders, whoever involved in tourism, like travel agents, the tour operator, the local hoteliers and the local community, the tourist, they have come together in many ways to overcome these issues. So in that context, they opted for alternative approach of development, basically implementing different philosophy as the principle to overcome these issues. With that particular reason, we can see the alternative forms of tourism, in which the sustainable tourism is one of the major form of tourism, where we can implement to this particular principles to overcome the negative impacts. Along with sustainable tourism, there are many other forms of tourism which are also contributing for the overall sustainable development. So generally we call them as alternative forms of development or alternative forms of tourism. So these are like ecotourism, allied concepts such as sustainable tourism, alternative tourism emerged because of that particular region as per Jeffrey. And achieving sustainable tourism are often fraught with the simplistic views of promoting ecotourism, alternative tourism as the path to the sustainable tourism development. Responsible tourism and sustainable tourism have the same goal, that of sustainable development. Difference is that in responsible tourism, individuals, organizations and business are asked to take a responsibility for their actions and their impacts. This shift in emphasis has taken place because not much progress has been made on realizing sustainable tourism in the past 15 years since the Earth Summit in Rio. So this is particularly because everyone has been expecting others to be sustainable. So coming to a discussion of this particular aspect of the alternative forms of tourism, as I said that there are various forms of tourism, like green tourism, responsible tourism. All these are part of sustainable development only. So whatever the goal that we have in a responsible tourism or a green tourism, that is ultimately leading to the sustainable development. Why these are coming up now? Because sustainable tourism, everyone was expecting to take a responsibility and implement the principles, whereas responsible tourism, in some other alternative forms of tourism, it is asked to everyone to take a responsibility, like the different stakeholders. The tour operator should take responsibility for their actions, and the local community should take action for their actions. Even the other stakeholders like the local hoteliers or maybe the travel agents or the transport department, everyone whoever involved in the process of the tourism development, for their actions, for their impacts, they should take a responsibility. So then we can achieve the responsible or a sustainable tourism. So this is the meaning of the need for the alternative forms of tourism. Coming to specifically responsible tourism, responsible tourism is also having various definitions. As per ICRT, International Center for Responsible Tourism, defines responsible tourism as a better place for people to live and better place for people to visit. Traveling that pays attention to the environmental preservation and safeguarding of natural resources, understanding of local culture, and promoting a cultural exchange between the tourist and the local people. and addressing the economic issues like the fair relationship with the local providers, support to the local development, etc. are part of this and produced by the tourism. Responsible tourism approach aims to achieve the triple bottom line outcomes of sustainable development, that is economic growth, environmental integrity and social justice. The distinguished characteristics of this particular approach is the focus on the responsibility of role players in the tourism sector and addressing in general to take action to achieve sustainable tourism development. Basically, this particular definition says that everyone, whoever involved in the tourism, should take responsibility. Basically, the local people, for giving a better experience to the tourist, even the tourist to give a better, opportunity, for selling their products or to buy the local products. According to this particular, definition, we can understand that the tourist should buy the local products which made by the local people, so that whatever the revenue is generating, that will directly go to the local people, so that they will get some kind of economic benefit. At the same time, by interacting with the local people, by purchasing the local products, there will be also opportunity to interact with the local people, so that they can understand their culture. These interactions will make the tourist more experienceable and more valuable experience also they will get. And the other things are basically using all the local products, maybe if they have local accommodation and food, experiencing all these things is a part of responsible tourism. And this particular responsible tourism basically says that everyone should take a responsibility, whereas in sustainable tourism it was expected to each other, just to like the government to take a responsibility. But major difference is in responsible tourism that everyone should take responsibility, whoever involved in tourism. So that is the concept of responsible tourism. There are various declarations on responsible tourism, and there are various principles that we can see. And basically, coming to the declaration, basically the first responsible tourism declaration was held in Cape Town in the year 2002. Then we had the other declaration in the year 2008 in Kerala in India. So coming to the Cape Town Declaration, in 2002, South Africa hosted the first conference on responsible tourism in destinations just prior to the Johannesburg World Summit on Sustainable Development. And it generates greater economic benefits for local people and enhances the well-being of the host communities, improves working conditions and access to the industry. And it involves local people in decision making that affects their lives and life chances, makes positive contributions to the conservation of natural and cultural heritage, to the maintenance of the world's diversity, provides more enjoyable experience for the tourist, provides access for physically challenged people, respect between the tourist and the host. So these are part of the responsible tourism declarations in the year 2002. Coming to the other declaration which was held in the year 2008 in Kerala, this particular declaration says that strengthening the principles of responsible tourism outlined in the Cape Town Declaration. The declaration recognized that responsible tourism is not a product, it is approach. An integrated approach is required involving many stakeholders, and example like Association of Independent Tour Operator developed a responsible tourism policy and hosts responsible tourism awards. So here the difference you can see, that the major difference that you can expect in this declaration is that they have identified responsible tourism not as a product, as a principle or as a philosophy where we can implement these principles to all the stakeholders in the tourism. Apart from responsible tourism and sustainable tourism, there are many other alternative forms of tourism that now we are going to discuss. Basically, the other forms of soft tourism, green tourism is also referred to be alternative to achieve the goals of sustainable and responsible tourism development. Alternative tourism promotes limited scale, low impact, community based activities. Alternative tourism includes small and medium enterprises of local inhabitants' property, basically managed by the local people. Other characteristics of alternative tourism are small impacts in the nature and social environment. So basically these principles, these different forms also leads to the same goal, that of sustainable and responsible tourism. In this, the other one is that the popular one, apart from the responsible and sustainable tourism, or the green tourism. It's a form of tourism which places a strong emphasis on practicing tourism in environmentally sound manner. A well-informed, selective individual from a higher class socio-economic groups taking a second or a third holiday in rural areas are often already well informed, but nevertheless potentially benefiting from the better coordination of provision in the countryside. Green tourism business are those actively engaged in reducing the negative environmental and social impacts of their tourism operations. Green tourism promotion is one of the leading tour operator in India based in New Delhi. Objective is to care for and conserve nature and to offer the tourist or the guest an authentic culture and a natural experience, and also enjoy the diversity of natural and cultural heritage and help us to promote and preserve and assist in conservation effects, experiences the friendliness of the people, and avoid activities which threaten wildlife or which may be potentially damaging the natural environment. Selecting the tourism products and services which demonstrate social, economic and environmental sensitivity, and keeping the environment clean, and supporting the local business, and use public transport wherever it is possible. So the other form is that soft tourism, a form of tourism which leads to mutual understanding between the local people and their guests, which does not endeavor the cultural identity of the host region and which endeavors to take care of the environment as best as possible. Adapted in developing countries, as it is a part of alternative tourism, gained recognition in early 90s in Austria and Switzerland, basically the Eastern Europe. Soft tourism is an answer to mass tourism basically, while in alternative tourism the focus of the economic social issues are main. In the soft tourism the emphasis is mainly on environmental matters. Okay, we have discussed the emergence of the alternative forms of tourism, basically the sustainable tourism, responsible tourism. Apart from that, the responsible and sustainable tourism, we have also discussed the other alternative forms of tourism like green tourism, soft tourism. Okay, and these different forms having the same goal, and coming to the conclusion of this particular presentation is basically the sustainable tourism management practices are applicable to all forms of tourism in all types of destinations, including mass tourism and the various niche tourism segments. Major sustainability principles refers to the environmental, economic and socio-cultural aspects of tourism development. Responsible tourism, green tourism, the other alternative forms of tourism and sustainable tourism have the same goal, that of sustainable development. So coming to the conclusion of this particular presentation, the sustainable tourism and responsible tourism are basically the alternative forms of tourism, and this particular form of tourism, basically any form like the sustainable, responsible, soft tourism and volunteer tourism, green tourism. So these are basically alternative to the development, because we have witnessed many socio-economic and environmental impacts in a negative way also. To overcome these negative impacts through tourism and maximize the impacts on tourism basically on society, environment and economy. So this particular concept has been laid down, and it is being taking a momentum. Initially it was started with the sustainable tourism, but the problem with the sustainable tourism is that everyone was expecting to take a responsibility basically to the government and the industry, but no one was actively involved. So with this later many people and government organizations and other stakeholders have realized that this particular approach is not achieving 100% the goals which were laid down for the sustainable tourism development. Then with that, there are many other approaches, those are emerging now, basically the responsible tourism, and that is one of the best alternative form of tourism, where we can witness many positive impacts and less negative impacts on in tourism. These impacts are basically getting the benefit for the local people and many other stakeholders who were involved. Even having a great and valuable experience for the tourist is also part of this particular concept. Apart from that, the green tourism, which is practicing the green initiatives, basically highlights mainly on environmental issues rather than socio-economic issues. Apart from that, there are the soft tourism, volunteer tourism. To some extent, we can consider as a sustainable tourism or alternative forms of tourism, which is having the same goal. So for more information on this particular module, please go through the e-text and the relevant references which mentioned on the website. Thank you.